Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Good.
I hear you loud and clear.
Good. It's the last thing you want is when you start a Teams meeting and no one can hear anyone.
I've got a fan going, so forgive me if there's a little bit of disturbance at some point.
Right. Challenging, isn't it? The temperatures. I don't know where you work. Is it very, or perhaps you're at home, but wherever it is, it can be a bit challenging.
Yeah, no, I'm at Totten Hub today and it is quite warm, so the fans are all going in here.
I think we've got about 7 people who are due to be attending. It's being recorded, actually, so. Hi, Ree. Hi.
Hello. Hello. Hi, Anna.
Morning.
Hi.
Are you staying nice and cool?
Trying to, you know what, I've got to say, being at the uni, it is a lot cooler in the rooms versus being at home.
Has it been air conditioned where you've been?
Yes, it's aircon. Well, I didn't expect it, so I walked in sweating, so, and then I walked in and it's aircon.
That's nice. We may wait a few minutes in case people are just going to come in a bit late. I want to apologise that someone helpfully mentioned it was half term. Actually, I had tried to avoid with our consortium meetings that we avoid half term, and then I realised, of course, this was. So what I was going to do is when we send out the recording and the documents, I could just say that if anybody wanted a sort of mop-up session, we could offer something else for those who still feel they need it after looking at the recording session. So next time we'll try to avoid the half term. Actually, that was an oversight on my part. Apologise. Anna, are you lined up yourself to be a practice educator for this one?
Sorry, say that again.
You're going to be supporting PP1 this time?
Yes.
Yes.
We are looking forward to it.
Right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. Louise. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Sorry, I'm just at my deal.
We thought we'd wait. Hello. Hi. We thought we'd wait a few minutes. Just people might have been a tiny bit late. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I sent some documents in the email this morning. I did actually notice the odd typo like you do when you sort of go through things at the last minute, and so I'm going to be sending out new fresh ones that hopefully don't have any typos in them. The learners will also have they have access to all of the documents, which they've been clearly labelled. Do not write on these. Download them, so they all have a version of their own.
Okay.
Maybe we'll get going, and people might come in. We'll start on the initial introductions just to say, oh, the people are coming in. Oh, that's nice. Elizabeth's coming as well. That's good. 1, 2, 3. I think it's almost a full house. What did I say? So I was going to start a presentation. I'd say that hopefully I can see you all. We see hands go up. Ree, you're there as well, aren't you? So if you give me a shout, just sort of interrupt me and say there's a question and I can answer it. If I don't manage to see it, notice you putting your hand up and asking a question. If for some reason we miss out on the questions, please do put them in the chat as well. You know, if you've got them and you can't, no one's acknowledging your hand going up, or you want something, and then we'll also have time for questions at the end. We'll make a note of them. So I do want to make sure that this, we get to answer everybody's question. And if for some reason we can't answer it today, we'll make a note of the question. It might be that because it's the first time that you think of something we actually haven't really addressed properly. So we'll do try and make sure that happens. Okay. Good. Welcome everybody. So we'll just introduce ourselves. I'm Rachel Bloodworth-Strong. I'm a senior lecturer in occupational therapy for the University of Winchester, degree apprenticeship in occupational therapy, and the program lead.
Hello, and my name's Ria. I'm Rachel's co-worker. So we're both lecturers on the occupational therapy apprenticeship program. It's nice to meet you all today.
Thanks. We share, and we're both academic personal tutors for the 12 learners that we have on this first year. So we know them all really well because we have a really nice small cohort. So we're very familiar with them, and we'll be sharing responsibilities as for the halfway online meeting for the placement as well. So what I will do is I will share. Everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it. There we go. Good. That's good because I can see you as well. Okay, that's good. Sometimes that doesn't always happen. Okay, so welcome. Right. I went to move forward on this one. That's odd. Okay, good. Sorry, I thought for some reason my slides weren't going to move forward. Okay, so welcome to the Practice Educator training. I just thought I'd give you an overview of the placement date. Welcome, Natasha. Nice to see you. Hi, welcome. We're just saying that if you we're just starting, only just literally got to the first slide, and we just said that if you've got any questions, put your hand up. If I can't see the hand, Ria's going to kind of interrupt me. Notice any chat questions in the chat. There will be time to have questions at the end. So we really want to make sure that everybody's questions or queries are answered. Also mentioned that the documents will be sent out afterwards. There's the odd typo on one of the forms. About two of the forms I noticed irritatingly at last minute, so I just thought I would send out a fresh load of it after rechecking everything properly. So these are the placement dates across the programme, but obviously we're particularly focusing on the first year. So the key dates for those that are full-time are 15th of June to 7th of August. So that's that. Reason I'm very slow. Okay, right. So these are learning outcomes. Somebody had actually asked in the questions about what the learning outcomes. So these are the official learning outcomes for the module. So they're really important for the to sort of cover. So hopefully by the end of it, the students will have been able to demonstrate these throughout their practice. So that's the point in terms of their sort of marking. So safe and effective professional practice, displaying awareness of ethical and legal issues, demonstrating professional standards regarding their behaviour, skills, communication, teamwork, and professionalism. So with support from yourselves, reflect on your learning and identify personal learning objectives. So to be able to sort of developing awareness of their own learning needs, be able to understand and reflect on the roles of interprofessional teams, and explain and show knowledge of the OT process relevant to this thing. And carry out an activity analysis of occupations used in that area. That's something that we can suggest that they do as a part of the part of their learning and progress. Okay, so I would just go into a little bit more detail from the handbook. So in terms of the handbook, there are different levels expected. Somebody has said, is this just observation? And we would say, no, this is not just an observational placement. But according to the handbook, this placement is to prepare people for professional practice. And so it will be a time to sort of develop professionalism, really. And they will be beginning to understand and be able to apply what they're learning. So they will be, in terms of sort of, interacting with people, interacting with clients, with patients, with people and with teams, and taking some responsibility in terms of being active. So it's not purely observational. I think that's important to say. So in the level that's expected, so things will be with your guidance. So they'll be active, but the lead will definitely come from you. So they'll be monitoring and managing and sort of regulating and checking from yourself, but they will be active participants. I hope that's sort of clear, because I know sometimes on programs the first placement might be deemed like an observational placement. Okay, so that's that one. I actually did want to stop, and I should have began by saying this. I want to say a big thank you to you all, which I should have said at the beginning. I've just launched into this, but I want to say a huge thank you to us for being willing to give your time and effort to support the learners on this program. And I want to stop and say that now, just to emphasise that, because I really am aware. Rhea and I have both been practice educators a number of occasions. I know that it's an ask, it's out of your already very busy schedules, but we do really appreciate you putting yourself forward to do this. We really value it. I just thought I would say that now. Okay, so you're probably already aware of this, but the World Federation of OTs requires 1,000 hours. So according to the programme, there are 30 weeks of placement across it, the programme. So just over 1,000 hours, really. That's to allow for sickness. There are a few part-time learners on the programme, and we've been having discussions with the employers about that. So there might be those of you here who are supporting learners who are going to have an extra week on the first placement 1, PP1, so that they can accumulate enough hours. So please do ask about that at the end if you're not sure, when it hasn't been communicated to you. So it's been definitely communicated to the relevant employers, but we just want to make sure that if those that are aware that there are 2 learners on the programme who are going to have an extra week. But bear in mind that if they're already on a part-time hours, so that each week will be part-time, so then they might have a day off, during their placement week because they're on part-time hours. But they're not allowed to be on less than 30 hours. So there'll be one on 30 hours and one on 32 hours. Okay, so you could have half a study day, including in the placement hours, or it could be as works out best with you, a full day every 2 weeks, agreed mutually. That's up to you. Okay, so learners also have to log. Oh, hand's gone up. I can see a hand going up. Yes.
Yeah, only because Lacey asked earlier. How many hours is the half the day?
Well, a sort of working day if you're full time is 7.5 hours. So it's just, 3¼ hours, I suppose.
Okay.
I mean, you've got to allow for lunch breaks, so 3 to 4 hours. So
Okay, that's cool. She was just asking. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky with a half day, isn't it? So sometimes it's easier to sort of think about it when you have like every other week you have a full day. But it's between 3 and 4 hours. That makes it. But the thing about both APSM hours and also the placement hours is that study is part of their placement, so they can just put down on the form that they've done 37.5 hours because it includes the study time. And similarly, their placement will be 7.5 hours for the day, even if half of it's been studying and half of it's been on placement. Does that make sense?
I would say from my experience, that actually a full day, I think every other week is probably would be more efficient, because actually when you find that they're working half a day and then they're going off, so it whatever works really, but I've always found that that's been quite beneficial.
Yeah, it sort of can vary, it's working out at the beginning with yourselves really what works for you, what works for them. You might have a certain day that you're having as leave, what is best for them to do, and I'm sure you might, if you've got placement experience before, that this is the reality. You sort of work it out between you at the beginning. of how that works best. But it's, you know, it is really helpful to plan it in if you can, but at the same time being sort of flexible on both parts. Okay. Right. So this is just taken from the handbook really about sickness, but you know, they're not allowed to be absent for holidays. They will have said in advance if they have a holiday. So they as far as we know, we don't have anybody. But in terms of sickness, they do need to keep you really informed because they're not going to be coming in. They just need to message you, email you, find a way to communicate that with you, as well as email the university. So there are some emails on there. So there's an occupational therapy email. In fact, they're on the placement paperwork, PP1 paperwork, which has been sent to you. So those are the emails to Suzanne. Sarah's our administrator for the occupational therapy. It's actually best to use her occupational therapy email. I will actually amend that. It shouldn't be her personal email. And then there's Suzanne's, who's the placement coordinator for the university. They are allowed to self-certify for up to 5 days, a bit like with employment, really. Please just, if you've got any concerns about the number of hours they're missing, please also, you know, keep in touch with us as well. But they need to take that responsibility to inform people. So all of their hours go on a record of hours form. That's a link in there, and I will. That's all been sent to you as well. In terms of overall, I think you need to really make a judgment about them achieving the competencies, because I suppose it's not just the hours. Obviously, they have to achieve a certain amount of hours across the programme, over 1,000. But if say they've only managed to achieve, you know, 270 hours in this placement, but you feel overall they've managed to demonstrate the learning objectives and the, you know, criteria that you feel satisfied that they can pass it, then it's possible to pass someone even if they haven't achieved the hours. It might be necessary to, you know, make the halfway sort of formative assessment or grading a bit later if they haven't quite been there enough. So again, if you sort of keep judgment on that in terms of where they're at and how many hours they've done. If they do fail the placement or are unable to complete the placement due to sickness absence, there are mechanisms in place for them to repeat the placement or make up hours towards the end, but that's a kind of the exception is made for them. So do keep in touch with this. I think that's the main thing to say. Okay, so some learners might have what we call a passport. It's a document which is like a risk assessment outlining any learning needs that might affect their progress on the placement in terms of rather their health needs. We encourage them to share those things with you at the start so that you can discuss any reasonable adjustments that you might need to make in terms of their health and well-being. So they might, because they're apprentices, they will have, you know, been already discussed these things with their employer as well and their occupational health teams. But we encourage those to come forward and discuss them with us as well. So some might bring those at the beginning to discuss any adjustments, and it could be things like, you know, if it's feasible to have some sort of break or to manage the number of hours they spend driving, you know, different needs. They should discuss those with you, and it's just like a negotiation about how they're going to learn and practice on the placement as well as manage their health needs, really. Okay, so passing the placement, how this happens is that the grading happens, you're the person grading, and we moderate all the forms that come in. We sort of check them over to sort of see if we feel it's fair, and obviously discuss ongoing any issues in terms of passing and failing. But the student will have a document that will be completed, and you will undertake that with them in terms of grading. But you know, we encourage the students, the learners, to own the document, and so make sure that it's all completed. That's their responsibility to, you know, bring it to you if they feel there's a bit that hasn't been signed or dated, etc. And then they upload it themselves to our online learning platform, and I'll go into the grading. So this is one document that they have to submit. They don't have to submit all their supervision document, but they have to submit other things like the hours document. But it's their main form is what they have to submit. They're told what they need. Okay, so these are all things they need: the PP1 form, placement form, the hours sheet, and the learning contract. And we keep the midway form that we document where we document our halfway meeting, and they don't need to upload all the supervision forms. So that's the student's responsibility, not yours to upload it. Okay, so on this slide are all the forms, and we will have a quick look at the forms afterwards, but maybe not now, not opening them all up now. But this slide contains a sort of link to all the different forms, and the learners have this. So they're the main forms we need. So they need the placement form. They have to fill in the front page with details on about who you are, where they are, things, so that we have those down. There's an induction form for sort of health and safety. We have a grading forms. We have a learning contract template, and then a form for the midway placement and the hours form. So they're all the important forms. But I will run through those forms and show you them separately. So placement supervision, again, on this document, there's a kind of PDF. You can just open it up there, just hopefully for ease. And we encourage you to plan the supervision in with them. We suggest an hour every week if you can to ensure consistency, perhaps plan it in advance. But again, you know, it very much depends on what your schedules are and, you know, what learning experiences they might need to undertake and what your own commitments are within the setting. So the idea of the supervision is so that you can together set achievable goals in relation to the development of their learning, so safe, effective personal practice, and they can have a chance to reflect on what they've done and think forward about what they can achieve next. So there's a sort of goal setting process which I will show you in the supervision form. It's nothing, no surprises there. It's really as you might do in any sort of type of supervision, thinking about what you've achieved and what you want to achieve next in relation to the learning outcomes. So it's the learner's responsibility to be proactive and seek learning opportunities and bring evidence to you, and your role is there to support and facilitate. And I just want to say that in the sense of I know, having been on Practice Educator before, I kind of want to sort of set everything up and give people a really nice timetable, etc. It's not all to do all of those things. You might want to put people in touch with people. They are mature learners. They've been in health and social care practice often for many years. So you know, I would expect them to be proactive to seek those learning opportunities out, to be emailing people for shadowing, etc., rather than you have to set up a big program for them. But obviously, if they're stuck and they feel like they're not able to, they want to sort of see something different, you can make suggestions. But I think it's important that they know that it's their responsibility to kind of go and seek those things out, and it's part of them demonstrating that their professionalism by taking that responsibility. But also to say, you know, occasionally it might happen on a practice education that people end up being used as a pair of hands. And I think particularly with apprentices, because they're often really experienced people, they might end up feeling like they've got to step in and do things themselves, take responsibility with a difficult, you know, situation, or you know, just help out as a pair of hands or make up the numbers. But I think it's important to say they are very much learners here, even though they are experienced practitioners. And I think that's more of a challenge for apprentices than it is for direct, you know, school leaver or direct entry students who might not feel so confident. But because they do feel confident, and we've encouraged them in our we've had simulation training, and one of the things they really took away was that actually I'm realizing that I'm going to be a learner. I'm going to be a student here. I'm not going to go in to be, you know, a practitioner like I normally am, like in my day job. So that's just something to point out. So we haven't got a mandatory assignment that gets marked, but we suggest written work or verbal presentation to demonstrate the learning and connection between theory and practice to support the grading. So, for example, the learning outcomes, it suggests carrying out an activity analysis of an occupation used in that setting. Well, the learners have been taught that activity analysis, and we'd hope that they would discuss that with you and what they learn and what they've understood and how that applies in that practice setting. So that's part of the learning outcome. So in a way, you can do that as part of wherever it fits best, really, but we're not setting a specific piece of work. And I'd just like to say that some of the grading criteria suggest so pieces of written or verbal presentation, e.g. the professionalism says produce a piece of work, e.g. case study, review of clinical technique, report, specialised project, relevant to the context, so which explores an appropriate evidence base, applies theoretical knowledge to practice. So these are sort of in the grading, so you can make those work in terms of what would work best in your area, and so to help you find, to help them bring the evidence to you, because it's difficult to be able to grade people if you can't see them a whole repertoire of their skills and behaviours. So that's why we're suggesting that you use these as kind of platform for them to actually produce pieces of work for you to be able to kind of evidence grading, really. So they might well present something in whatever way is most appropriate in some setting, perhaps the team, that's something they've learned, new piece of work, whatever works best in your area. And of course, according to whether the fact that this is their first placement, as the final placement perhaps be something more elaborate, more advanced. Okay, so in terms of placement contacts, again, just going back to sort of, we have a university placement lead, Sophie, myself, and Ree, and our administrator, Suzanne. Okay, so in terms of university support, again, we have halfway meeting. So learners are notified who their halfway meeting lecturer is through an online system called In Place. Learners are responsible for organising this meeting in advance. We're going to send them, Ree and I sent them a range of slots that we're free on around the halfway week. It's roughly 8-week placement, so it'll be week 4 to 5. And we will tell them when we're free, and they'll sort of work out when you're free and send us a Teams meeting around that time. So it will last around an hour, and we'll have a chance to discuss with you on your own any issues and with the learner on their own, and then time to come back together. So that's what happens in that meeting, and it is online on Teams, which I hope is helpful. Okay, so these are our contacts. Okay, so in terms of grading, I'll go into lots of sort of some individual, go through some detail on the paperwork. But we're looking for safe practice, supported intervention under supervision, and reflective growth with your support in this placement. So you have an induction where you sign off things like safety, fire, policies and procedures, what you expect of them in that setting, making sure they have the necessary access to the buildings, etc., as is appropriate. Some of you might need to work out how they can access your data systems, laptops, etc. So those are part of the induction sign-off. So when it comes to assessment, you will have you set your sort of learning objectives, and halfway you have a halfway assessment, and then at the end summative or final assessment. So there are different sort of checkpoints. So all the way along, you've got opportunity for improvement. Section 1 and 2, which are going to of the 5 criteria are it's a kind of pass-fail, and section 3 to 5 are graded A to E, and so they get a grade at the end. Okay, so your formative and summative assessment have a kind of table that you can fill in where you give feedback, and then the learner writes reflections, and at the end you write your final feedback. So there's a kind of great staged process for the feedback that you give according to the different criteria. Okay, so that's just explaining the different sort of how much you're involved at different levels. So you're guiding them at this level. supervising them. Okay, so the criteria, some universities call them competencies, but there's sort of areas that you're grading them in terms of sort of knowledge, skills and behaviours really. So it's the foundation, if you like, are being safe and being professional, and then section 3, 4 and 5, where you get specific grade or numerical grade at the end. They're interpersonal skills, therapeutic skills and leadership and management skills. So that's essentially 5 things. So section 1 and 2 are pass fail and section 3 to 5 are graded. So I'll show you the individual sort of grids, marking criteria, but this just outlines the importance of safety and then professionalism. So in section 1, if you fail one single part of that, and there are 10 parts to it, it's broken down into 10 things or 10 areas. If you fail one of them and then you fail at the end, so you can be needing improvement halfway through, but by the end you fail one element of that, then you unfortunately fail the whole placement. But we would strongly encourage you to notify straight away if you notice anything that needs improvement at an early stage in terms of safety. So they're broken down into 10 things, 10 aspects, but they all very much relate to HCPC codes of conduct, you know, professionalism, things like confidentiality, sort of awareness of safe practice, human rights and dignity. So if any of those are lacking, please do notify us. Halfway, we'd expect to sort of hear about that, but even in advance, if there's some area that the person's not doing well in those areas, they're very important. It might appear that the person isn't deemed safe to carry on in the placement. I think it's important to say. Section 2 is more about professionalism, and did somebody say something there? Have you got a hand up? Hi. Oh, I heard a voice. Okay. Section 2, there are if you fail 3 elements of section 2, then you fail the placement. But there's leeway because it's 3 things and not 1 thing. And I'll show you those. Hello, no, nobody's got their hand up. I'll go into detail on this, and hopefully by the time we've done a kind of gone through an exercise of marking, you'll understand what this means. So these are the practice skills, interpersonal, therapeutic and leadership. So interpersonal sort of communication, written and verbal communication, teamwork. Therapeutic, more like occupational therapy, skills, practice, assessment, clinical reasoning, reflection, practical skills. And then leadership is, even at this stage, is, you know, taking personal responsibility, managing yourself, taking initiative, creative, new ideas, seeking opportunities for learning, those sorts of things at this level. Okay, so in terms of grading, I'll show you on the how we do this in terms of marking, but it's an A to E. E is essentially less than 40, which is a fail, but D above is pass. So in terms of, we normally sort of say excellent is A, you know, good, very good, good to very good is B, competent is C, sort of perhaps inconsistent but still passing. Generally, you might require support, but it's still a pass, and then E is definitely a fail. Okay, so again, this is just reiterating the conditions to fail. So you would fail placement. So we will explain how you pass. So it doesn't sound very positive, but just to be clear, any single criterion for section 1, 3 or more unsatisfactory at the end of section 2. So they're just pass, fail, or satisfactory, unsatisfactory. Section 3 to 5 skills are graded A to E. Okay, again, that's just explaining that again. Okay, so this is just giving you an example in terms of the slide. I'll go into it and I'll show you the actual PP1 form, and I've done a kind of dummy one. So example of how you might grade. So this is an example from section 4, therapeutic skills. At halfway, we're not expecting you to give a number. We're expecting you to give a kind of an idea of the grade within the grade boundary. So within an A, so it'd be like 70 plus. and it will be an X. You put an X in there, where just roughly where they are. But in the final summative one, we'll ask you to give them a number, and I'll explain that with the grid. And this is how the grid works. So it'll be a percentage. So you'll, by the end of it, you'll work out, you know, where you think they are in terms of, are they more like 55? The only thing we would ask you is not actually, and I used to actually had that on the slide, don't give them a 1 mark away from the 70, you know, 69, which is avoid the 69, 59, 49. We'll make it actually, you know, make sure that it's a whole, you round it up, think if it's a 59, and 49, etc. So you can have any other mark like 55, 56, 57, 58, but not 59. Then we probably think it should be, to be fair, it should be a 70, for example, 50, 60, 70. Okay. Okay, and the final grade, you calculate the numbers for 3, 4, and 5, and then you add them up, divide them by 3, and then you enter that on the final page. And I will now stop the form and show you that. Okay, I'm going to get the form up now. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so this is an excerpt of the placement form. I've just taken the main bits of it. At the end of placement, on the front page, there should be this grid completed. We'll need the learner to make sure that all those things are on there. First one will be a pass-fail, first 1 and 2. Sections 3 to 5 will be a figure, a number. It will say whether they've passed or failed, and the number of hours will go on there. So the learner will put that in, and then your initials against that. So that would need to go on the form. I'm just going to go through the grid. So this is section 1. Hopefully, sorry, move that over there. Hopefully, so these are all, you can see section 1.1 and 1.2 is actually 10 things. So this particular learner halfway needs improvement on all of these. So in this particular case, I would expect maybe you to kind of just keep in touch with us, let us know, and certainly by halfway at the meeting, just let us know that there's a real concern about this. But at the beginning, if there's a concern about any of these sort of safety areas, to let us know, because that person might not be able to carry on. But let's say you put a kind of X in that, you know, they were perfectly satisfactory. Maybe one of them was a concern, but by the end of it, the main thing is that all of these are ticked as satisfactory for them to be able to pass. That's the main thing. Okay, so I've just highlighted this. If any criteria have been marked as unsatisfactory, the placement is graded as fail. So please inform the university if unsafe practice is recorded. And then we go on, then this is the report, and there's one of these for each of the sections. So your halfway feedback, their reflections, and there's sort of halfway and formative and summative, that goes in there. So then we've got, we've got professionalism. Again, it's 10 aspects of professionalism. So this person needs improvement in several areas, and it got unsatisfactory on negotiating and managing personal learning, and on evaluating personal effectiveness. And they've been satisfactory on all the others, but actually, unfortunately, they've remained unsatisfactory. You feel on those 2 areas, but according to the criteria, it has to be 3 or more that they fail in order to fail. So in that sense, they've just about passed this section. Okay, so we're going on to the grading section now. So this particular learner, in terms of communication at halfway, they're just about acceptable on most things, apart from recognising the roles of the multidisciplinary team. And they've carried on, they haven't really passed that at the end either, but the other ones some of them they've got a C and other ones they've got a D. So they're sort of on the boundary between C and D, apart from one fail. So you enter the overall section 3 outcome in the box below. And what I would suggest that you do is you make sure you've got 10 things in a way, because there's 10 of these boxes. So you've got 1 E, 6 Ds, 3 Cs, and 3 Cs, and you should have 10 courses in there. And then at halfway it can just be roughly it's a C, D, etc. And then the final one you give them a number. So we've decided that because they still got a fail in one of them, and 2 of them, was it one of them or 2 of them? 2 of them, but then they've got 6 Ds, but they've got 3 Cs. You decide to sort of pass them slightly over the halfway mark. So 47 given this person.
Oh, we've got a hand up, Rachel.
Oh, yeah.
Hiya. So I'm just a bit confused. In the final summative section, am I putting ticks or am I putting numbers?
Number for this little box here.
So the number only goes on that last table there, and that's it.
So yeah, not halfway. So at halfway, you just give them a roughly they're a C, roughly they're a D, roughly they're an A.
Yes.
And then you and the final one, you want to add up where how many crosses you've got in each one, and then give them a mark. We're not expecting you to put a mark in each of these.
Would that not, just as a suggestion, would that not potentially be easier, because then that way you can just average them rather than guessing where what that X means?
Yeah, I mean, we debated this in terms of how complicated that is for you to do. If you find it easier for yourself to do that, I'm not today saying you don't do that. You might find it easier, but it there's a certain amount of sort of qualitative judgment about this, I suppose. So I think if we have it that you've got 10 things and you've got a range of E's, D's, and C's, then you give them a sort of final overall judgment rather than adding them up. I mean, it's a fair question, but we had this debate about whether it was easier to do it, and I think we felt it was probably better to do it like this, rather because there's so many different boxes. There's 10, so you've got 10 for each. There's a lot of different criteria. So if you, for example, we had 7 overall competencies or criteria, and you just had an overall number, it'd be sort of easier to do. But I think because there's so many individual sections for each of the criteria, it was felt to be slightly onerous to think about an individual mark for each of those.
I get the perspective. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But it is a really fair point, because you might feel that's easier for yourself, and you mark alongside the number and then add them up and divide it all. Yeah, and make an average. Yeah. It slightly also depends on what each one is and to what extent the impact of it, or yeah.
Yeah, it's not all equal. Each criteria is not equal, is it? So,
not exactly.
Yeah.
No.
And I do think you get a feel for the student, don't you, overall, in terms of there's some areas that they absolutely excel at and some areas that they're very much developing. So I think you go off your own judgment in terms of who you're seeing, because some services are so complex that actually, it's that fairness overall. But I mean, you go by your own sort of clinical expertise and grade that as appropriately.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm just giving you examples. So this particular person, moving on. So therapeutic skills, it's sort of good and acceptable. And then in the final one, good, in fact, very good for some things, past everything. So again, the overall judgment, 6 Bs, 4 Cs, 62 for that one. And then if I kind of carry on that vein, similarly, the final one was 55. So there you go, your little boxes. You've got 47, 62, 55. Add them all up, divide by 3, and then you get 55 at the end. That's how you do it. And then your hours. Okay. Right. I will now share. I will share the forms. I'll share the supervision form now. Okay, so this is a supervision form. So what we'd encourage you to do is encourage the learners to sort of prepare for the supervision by thinking, what have I achieved, and writing it down according to the grids, the criteria in terms of behaviour, skills, attitudes, looking at sections 1 to 5, numbering them for yourself, just so that they can identify where they are and where they feel they need to be. That's like a helpful way to prepare for the supervision. And then you've got, you record the supervision here, what you've written, and then the learning objective. So it's like, do I agree with what they've, what do I feel in terms of what I agree, not agree? And then part 3 is the learning objective. And then hours can be put in there as well, just keep a check on those. Specific observable areas for development list, and not a list of activities. So I think this is important in terms of supervision, because I think the main thing to say from this is that they need, if they're failing in an area or they need improvement in an area, I suppose they need to know how they can demonstrate those things to you. That's the main point to sort of bring across, which is, I know that that's sometimes more of an art to do that. It's to think carefully about what you're actually looking for, and what, rather than a sort of something very generic and vague. Just be clear what you want them to demonstrate in order to be able to grade or pass them, or how they need to improve, so that they know what they need to do. So that's the main thing for that. So that's I'm showing that form. I will show you the hours records. Quite straightforward, hopefully, for you to look at here. Week 1. So the hours worked including study, so it should have a total there. Okay. So study times allocated to placement hours. So hopefully that's straightforward, that one. Learning contract. Right, here we go. Learning contract. What do you want them to achieve? Now, I appreciate that this feels like, it can feel repetitive in terms of, you've got your marking criteria, you've got your grids, you've got learning outcomes, but it's just another way, I suppose, to sort of say, where are we heading here? What specific things are they going to do? So we have this as well, so that you're undergoing supervision. So it's a way to sort of help formulate goals that are smart and achievable in relation to the criteria. So hopefully not something that sort of conflicts with that, but something that will aid you to sort of together to set goals for the placement, really. And there might be specific things that you can think of relevant to your area that really, you could plan in those things in relation to this learning contract. And what the other things I want to show? Oh, we have a midway form. And there's also, you don't need to see that, but there's just like a health and safety form with, different details of things. So I think that's fairly self-explanatory. I think I've really covered everything, and it might be really helpful at this point to, yeah, that was the end of the actual presentation and showing you the marking. So we've got 10 minutes left. Has anybody got any questions?
So I just say it's nice to have some nice, straightforward paperwork for a change. I think some universities I don't know, they make it a little bit overcomplicated. So this, yeah, looks really good. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm really pleased because,
Yeah.
I've been in the position myself, and also I've been in another university, and I know, there's different ways of doing it. And actually, occupational therapy, higher education, they want to have a common placement paperwork, which would be so good, I think, as long as it's
Yeah.
not overly complicated. But I think we're working towards that because that's happening in physio. So,
Yeah.
so I'm sorry. I know I was half tempted to see that we could speak to Southampton and use, ones that you've used already in your area, that we could always use the same one. But, we've used this in Winchester before, so I've tried to actually make it, we've made it straightforward, we've slightly, hopefully made it a bit more, so I really, you are the first group of people that actually use this specific, the way we've done it for the apprenticeship. So I really hope it works out. And please do give us a shout if you notice anything that's not working out for you.
Thank you.
Right, Anna.
Apologies, I seem to have missed the email with all the documentation, etc. on. Can you tell me who'd sent it in the first place, and then I'll be able to find it?
So I sent it this morning.
Oh, I haven't received anything today.
I know that Sarah's going to send out all of the documents again, and this recording and the presentation to everybody on this meeting. That's very odd. Let me just make a
I'm
note.
a joint PPE, and my
okay.
my partner is also Anna, so it could be that they've sent it to one Anna rather than two.
I can see Anna Fry on there.
Yeah,
on the CC list. I can see it there.
I would check, see if it's in your junk. It might have gone into
There's a lot of documents in it, so it could be that it didn't like it, because there was loads of documents on there. Possibly.
Anna Fry at hants.gov.uk, or is that
Anna.Fry?
Yeah, Anna.Fry at Hants.
Yeah, that's bizarre, isn't it?
10:13.
Yeah, I can see you copied in.
Well, apologies. Let me
No.
Okay,
well, Anna, I'll send you separately after the meeting.
Lovely, thank you. Yes,
yeah,
I don't
and make sure
quite know where it is.
I was also just going to say as well, if you've got any concerns, you can reach out to us before our midway. If you've got any sort of urgent concerns that you feel need to be dealt with before, please do reach out. We're always here to support.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, so if nobody has any more questions, you have a few more minutes back. Thank you so much for your time and attending this meeting. We really appreciate it, and we really, really wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you know where we are, so please reach.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.